today the SLLS program is going to interview or listen to a presentation by Dr. Kamal Gammampila, who you will be seeing on the screen here. So I don't know much about Kamal. So let me ask you questions, Kamal, from you to understand your background and who you are. So tell us your Sri Lankan background, where you're coming from, which school do you go to, and what was your background, educational background?
Right, I went to St. Thomas's Kurutala first, and then Mount Lebanon, and then I came to UK, and I got an engineering background in electronics, etc. But I never practiced that, so to say. I went on to do biomedical engineering, etc. Then I got a Master of Philosophy in biophysics and physics from Brunel University, and a PhD from Imperial College in physiology. And so I've been a biomedical scientist, and I lived in the UK for over 50 years, most certainly 50 years. I came to UK in 69. But since of late, I began to live in Sri Lanka. Well, I'm in a bit of a transition at the moment. Only since July, I began to live in Sri Lanka. And for the last more than 10 years, 11 years, I believe, I studied this subject called Rajarata Vakukadu Rogaya, or the chronic kidney disease of dry zone farmers, middle-aged or young farmers. And I've been working on my own. I work as an independent scientist. And in Sri Lanka, in the last 10 years, 12 years, I work with people like Professor Jazing very closely almost from the very beginning. And also I've been coordinating and working with other people in the in CKDU study groups. I would say main groups. I think new groups are emerging now. And that's my background. Unfortunately, even up to now, we haven't resolved this crisis called CKDU. And I think I'll cover that in a little more detail when we go into the main issue. There are many other epidemics in the same communities, same people, and multiple diseases in the same people. And there are almost everything is in the, well, I would say almost everything is in the dry zone. But there are indications that certain things are beginning to appear in the mainstream, like cities such as Colombo.
So let's wait until you start your presentation for that.
Yes.
This is all about you and
Yeah.
understand your background. So how old were you when you left Sri Lanka?
How old was I?
Yeah.
Yeah, about 1920, so 19 to 20, that type of thing.
Okay. So does that mean that you studied in Sri Lanka? Your primary education, secondary education?
Primary education in Sri Lanka, St. Thomas's Kurutala,
And?
Then Mount Lebanon, and came to UK.
Okay, you didn't do university in Sri Lanka?
No, I didn't.
So the question is basically, so your background in Sri Lanka was quite limited to your primary and secondary school, but more recently with your CKD research, you got into the political arena as well. Yeah, so you have been advising governments on this issue. How did you get into the political arena and advising the governments or as ministers on this aspect?
The thing is, some people think that I've been advising the government, but no government has told me that.
I see.
But I also know that things I've been claiming, certain things are being enacted, or that they do not tell you, see? And if anyone wants to blame former President Gotabaya, for example, on his organic initiative, please blame me first. And there may have been other people too who said these things, but in a scientific background, I explained things to all the presidential candidates before the elections, and I wrote to them again after the elections. And I think President Gotabaya Rajapaksa understood that there was a huge issue. I must say all the others understood that too. I have met them or communicated with every leader, I should say, except not so much with the current president of the government. I attempted, I must say, I failed to communicate with them. And with previous people, I communicated because personally I had friends and relations who had links to the political hierarchy in Sri Lanka. And I'm also a guy, I'm very persevering. The reason is this. From the very beginning, I understood the problem, I should say. What I'm going to say today, maybe they are refined a little bit, but the basics, I understood the first day I attended the meeting in Colombo in 2013, I think 13th of December, I think it was. When I went to Sri Lanka on holiday, I contacted my friend, perhaps you know that, you know him, Asoka Tenepatu, late Asoka Tenepatu. And he said, no, I can't meet you tomorrow. I'm doing this. Then I said, well, that's exactly where I want to be too. I want to find out. Then he arranged for me to attend the meeting. And at the end of the meeting, they said, why is it only in Rajarata? They were only talking about kidney disease at the time. And when we use the same fertilizer and eat the same food everywhere, that was the general consensus about the conclusion of the conference. And today we are asking the same question. Even those who are trying to solve this issue, genuinely solve this issue, are asking the same question. When I say genuinely, there are people who are not interested in solving this problem for different reasons. Okay. I have understood that very clearly. I think some of us do understand that very clearly, as not everyone. And today what's happened is, those who do not want to address this issue correctly or admit to the background, why it is happening, are running the show, so to say. And those who want to address this have become silent somewhat. They have been marginalized. And some people have been insulted, etc. I have issues I have personal issues, I should say, to the point that I've got complaints with the police, and even now, I don't use Gmail, etc., because some critical emails I have sent to officials, there are no records at all. Even my iCloud, things that I say, if I send that message, they get something else. One may say, how is it possible? Well, take it from me. That's happening. We are in Sri Lanka, we are in a very difficult spot. What we are trying to do, what I am doing is fighting a big global system, agrochemical industry. That is what we are struggling against. And a professor in Denmark, he says they've got 25 billion or something like that dollars committed to this. And we are struggling against that. I may fail, I don't know, but I wouldn't stop my struggle. Let me put it that way. Because we are on a very bad wicket in Sri Lanka. We are going to get wiped out, I'm pretty certain, not today, tomorrow, not 10 years, say 100, 150 years. That will happen. I'll try to explain why I say these things a little later. And also, at the moment, everyone thinks that oh, it is the people in Rajarata, poor people who are affected. It doesn't matter to us anymore. I'm afraid that's not the case at all, Tina. It is going to get all of us. But first, of course, we'll get them and the Rajarata poor people or the dry zone poor people, and we are getting them left, right, and center.
Yeah.
It's,
Okay, Kamal.
yeah.
Let's start your proper presentation now. Yeah,
Right. Okay.
and then we'll ask the questions later.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you can share your presentation.
So this is my topic, and agricultural toxicant diseases of Sri Lanka's dry zone. And my name, etc. You got there. One thing I must say about my name, it is spelled with they are all M's and there are no N's in it. And having said that, right. Now, these pictures tell nearly the whole story, I should say. Now, one on the left, 2014 CKDU map, is following the WHO study of 2009 to 13. And 22 map of kidney disease or CKDU is taken from Gunasekara et al. As you see, the area affected has changed enormously. There's one which is double, and almost all of the dry zone is affected now. And if you look at the thalassemia map, if you look at the, sorry, I'm looking at the other computer too. If you look at the thalassemia map, thalassemia is mostly in the dry zone wherever the kidney disease is. And this does show that there is a common factor in thalassemia and kidney disease. And let me first talk about the epidemics as such, or the diseases. I would call them epidemics because everything is in large scale. And we had, when it comes to CKDU, following the WHO study, government said we had 400,000 CKDU cases. Of course, they were not all patients, but ACR 30 was the test used, and by that, estimated number was 400,000. And today we know that 5-year-old children do have renal biomarkers. And so it's not a matter of farmers working the paddy fields in the sun. Not at all. When it comes to, because such thoughts are being promoted, when it comes to working in the sun, road builders, plantation workers, for example, and building site workers, they work for 250 days a year in the sun, and they have no kidney disease. Whereas the farmers work only about 20 days per crop cycle, so about 40 days a year, if they were to work in the paddy field. Not everyone does work in the paddy fields because most people contract out some of the work. Anyway, so it has nothing to do with the sun and climate, because many people are trying to make this issue of the climate. And we got thalassemia. There has been a thalassemia study in 2017, and that was done in all the districts, 25 of those, and in each district, 3 schools were chosen, and from each school, 100 or thereabouts children were taken, and they were between 15 and 17 years of age. And in Anuradhapura, we got 23.9% thalassemia in that age group, and Kurunagala 20.7%. And I must say they are the highest, and others are equally bad, and it gives a national average of about 10.6. And so thalassemia, following that study, thalassemia was declared at 500,000. In fact, my calculations show that it should be around 700,000. no big deal, but the thing is, it all goes to show that there's a huge crisis there. And the thalassemia study, the thalassemia is a genetic disease, but genetic diseases can be modified by or triggered by, as it were, by environmental factors. Now, the thalassemia study considered those. They considered elevation, ethnicity, rainfall, and malaria data going back to 1925 and 1956, I think. They did not consider heavy metals and glyphosate, etc., that was established in the urine of our Rajarata people in 2013. The publication came out. And subsequent publications that have shown these figures. Didn't the thalassemia group know that these things are possible? Did they not know that so many people are affected with the kidney disease in the country, and the heavy metals and weedicides and pesticides are associated with that? When it comes to heavy metals, WHO study showed that arsenic, cadmium, and lead, I'm focusing on those because we got some data for those, clear-cut data. WHO study showed that they are in our diet, they are in our food, rice, for example, drinking water, in our urine, in our blood, and subsequent studies by Professors Ratis Vikramasinghe and Kamini Wanagasuri together, and Dr. Anand Jajalal did blood studies in this area. And so, of course, those studies were not available to the thalassemia study by then. But they had enough information to include heavy metals and weedicides, pesticides, etc. in their study. By the way, WHO study also found 11 weedicides and pesticides agents in the urine. We don't have details in the blood. And the urine, they said 7 or 8 were above the US reference standards. And we haven't done any studies on weedicides or pesticides or even glyphosate, which we are talking about up to now. And I believe they are in our diet too. Because in UK, for example, in Weetabix, etc., there is glyphosate. And they are keeping a good eye on it. We don't know how much it is in our diet. We really need to find out. Anyway, so that's...
Kamal, there is a question which probably is appropriate to address it at this stage. The question is about, there are several different types of thalassemias.
Yes.
There's alpha, beta, and there are thalassemia traits. Are you talking about beta thalassemia?
All of them. The 15 to 23.9 includes all of them. And in Rajarata, if I remember correctly, beta thalassemia is around 6% in this group.
Okay. And you're not counting the traits, the full-blown thalassemia, not the thalassemia trait. So, the thalassemia is autosomal recessive condition for us, right? Yes. So there is, if you have just the trait of thalassemia, you might have minor symptoms, but not the full-blown disease. So in your calculation, is it only the disease, or is it the disease plus the traits of thalassemia as well?
Well, I am presenting the data as presented by the...
what you have seen, yeah.
Premavardhana et al. That is what's called the thalassemia study.
Right.
Okay. Right. I think the point we need to get to is, in Sri Lanka, even chronic kidney disease, CKDU, or even for that matter, chronic kidney disease, only about a week, 2 ago, I heard someone say on a medical doctor from Kandy saying that it is genetic. Okay? We like to think everything is genetic in Sri Lanka. Then there's no one is responsible. Thalassemia may be there. I'm not saying no. But we are using the fact that thalassemia is a genetic disease per se to say that explain these high numbers of CKDU and other diseases as pure genetic diseases.
So just to clarify on that point,
Yeah.
you agree that it is a genetic disease because in our medical schools we have been taught about the
Yeah.
thalassemia gene and how it's been transmitted.
Right. Okay. The hemoglobinopathy, so I think thalassemia itself is a hemoglobinopathy. And all the hemoglobinopathies can be caused by other agents. There are studies elsewhere to show that. And this study itself looked at environmental factors, suggesting that environmental factors can influence the start of thalassemia. Otherwise, they wouldn't have looked at that. In fact, Professor David Weatherall, perhaps some of you might know, from Oxford, he was involved with the Sri Lankan thalassemia studies from about 1990s, from the very beginning. And he himself was saying in 2008, I believe, that there has to be a factor to cause these mutations. And until they haven't found that, let me say that. And that factor seems to be the heavy metals and possibly pesticides and pesticides. Heavy metals, most certainly, yes. Heavy metals, most certainly, yes. That's what I believe. And I'm not an expert on the subject. And this is where we need experts to take an independent look at what's going on. Otherwise, the view is everyone is happy, I would say, those who want to hide these matters. No one is responsible for anything about these diseases, because they are all genetic diseases. That is the issue that we need to get away from. Yeah, hi. Please ask the question, yeah.
No, that's fine. That's clarified the issue. So you continue with it. You will know that there are lots of doctors here, but we have been brought up in traditional belief that thalassemia is a genetic condition. So we will be critically analyzing your points, what you are trying to say, that the heavy metals may have an influence on the genetic background as well. So please carry on with it.
Right, okay. Now when it comes to cancers, oral cancers are the highest in Sri Lanka, and it's going up. And I think the government just announced an initiative on that, and asking people not to chew betel leaf or tobacco and areca nut, etc. That's very true, but one thing I must say, in the WHO study again, they found high levels of heavy metals in betel leaf and what's the other one? Betel leaf and tobacco. I would say the reason is they've been using at certain various government agencies did this in the past. I know that for absolute certainty. They took the mud off the tanks and reservoirs and used those as compost. Even following Gotabaya's initiative, they did that. Just crazy. Those tanks, etc., full of these toxicants. That's why those lotuses and all these things grow extremely well in that mud. And so when it comes to oral cancer, there could be additional reasons. Betel leaf and tobacco chewing. This is in addition to conventional chewing of betel with other toxicants such as areca nut or whatever. And we need to pay attention to that too, those who are trying to address this issue. And adult and childhood cancers are going up. Everyone knows that. but I'll show later, according to the NCCP data, they are not going up as much as they ought to. I'll explain what I'm saying a little later. And in Sri Lanka, another issue is malnutrition. And that's been a problem for a long time. Malnutrition hasn't changed. That is anemia and micronutrient deficiencies since 2007, despite nutritious programs. And I pointed this out a long time ago. I believe the government then acted on it and suspended the school summer portion or whatever, the nutritious food or the powders they handed out or served to school children. And now I think they are restarting it. And I hope I believe they have addressed the issue correctly. But if they continue to use dry zone rice again, for example, and maize and things like that, we are going to go back to square one. We really need to ask, why did these programs change? The conditions remain the same, unchanged, despite attempts to correct them with nutritious programs. And that is because, I'll come to it in detail, when you are exposed to toxicants, you pass excess urine, diuresis, or even polyuria. And I'll explain those in a little bit, yeah. And so malnutrition is one thing. This is the birth defects, infant mortality, and stillbirth are at a high level. Some people might say, oh, it's not very high, it's 1%. But if you look at the one right on top, that was declared by the WHO in 2022. And the one at the bottom, I came across that only a month or two ago through the newspapers. This is a crucial slide, I might say. Earlier I said this is a sign of the dry zone. Then the question is, why the dry zone? Dry zone gets hill country water for rice cultivation, almost everywhere. And there are patches within the dry zone where they can't get hill country water for paddy cultivation because they are locally at a higher elevation. In Mihimtale, for example, place called Kudagama, I've been there. There are no diseases at all, small patch. In Rajangani, those who are at a higher level, they don't have diseases. And what it is there are tiny quantities of heavy metals, because as I said, we don't have data for weedicides and pesticides, heavy metals in the water, hill country water. We drink that water in Colombo. We drink that water in Kandy. We drink that water in Anuradhapura, Polonnaruwa, taken from the tanks, and perhaps clean of bacteria and things like that. The thing is, to harvest a kilogram of rice, you need 3,000 to 5,000 liters of water. And that's where the catch is. Even everywhere you need that amount of water. But the thing is, the small amounts of toxicants in the water becomes biomagnified to make that rice extra toxic. Rather, the farmers' rice extra toxic. Farmers almost everywhere eat what they grow. And if we have toxic rice, then you will be having toxic rice almost every day of the year. Perhaps it might change crop cycle to crop cycle. But the rice harvested from a toxic field, so to say, if we had toxic rice once, whatever you'll be getting toxic rice, maybe it might change a little bit depending on the amount of water you get, etc. And or how clean or polluted the water is. So that's why the Rajarata farmers are falling ill and having all the diseases. And those farmers who got rainwater in Rajarata as well as everywhere else in the country, say for example, I am from Ahangana, only rainwater paddy field, no diseases. Jaffna, no diseases. Ampara, in the coastal belt, no diseases. Ampara gets water for paddy cultivation from Senanaka Samudra. And those who use Senanaka Samudra are disease-free. And also, Senanaka Samudra has no link to hill country water. Almost everywhere else, there's a link to hill country water. And that is the issue. And the urban dwellers, such as in Colombo, rich people eat various food. And even the poor people, that is somewhat diverse, might say, people might be kuttu and more bread, etc. And also, they get rice and everything else from various places. So the city people get toxic rice as well as clean rice, a mixture, not in the same bag maybe, but 1 week toxic rice, next less toxic, and so on. And even in the cities and towns, such as Anuradhapura, Polonnaruwa, there are no kidney patients or diseases, to my knowledge. And in fact, we've been referring to this as farmer's disease, young farmer's disease. But somehow we are trying to move away from that too. We are trying to say this is not a farmer's disease anymore. And that is done with very weak science or false science. So these are things we got to be mindful of. And these diseases are in the dry zone because mothers are exposing the babies when it comes to most of the diseases, what we call genetic diseases, we can identify by toxicant exposure by the mother of the baby in the womb. Professor Rajitha Wickramasinghe and Kamini Manikasuriya together and independently Dr. Anand Jayalal did studies in Madhavacha, 2 different areas. They came almost to the same conclusions. The blood studies are such that the blood lead levels are 1.7 to 88 micrograms per liter for Jayalal et al. And Levine is the Wickramasinghe and Manikasuriya, did work with the American group, and their blood lead levels are 10.3 to 99.9. And at those levels, 13% of the mothers, 80% of the mothers would expose the babies in the womb to the minimum level to cross the mother-baby barrier, so to say. And about 50% at 3 times the level, and about 10% at 5 times the level. Whichever way you look at it, even the minimum level is considered sufficient to cause neurological effects. In fact, that's how neurological effects, critical levels are identified by the EFSA, European Food Standard Agency. And those things should be applied to us too. And we are ignoring these things. And at these levels of heavy metals, I think most of the diseases we could account for by those. And we are not doing anything about those. We have ignored them. By the way, I must say, most of the things I say are not published by me. But I use works that are being published by other people. And of course, I have my own thing. But when I present those, I'll acknowledge that they are not published. But I have sent them to what's called the CKDU committee, which is defunct, I believe now. But there are about 25 academics, scientists, various people of that nature concerned with CKDU. There was a committee. But still I send to all those people even now. Anyway, So if we do not address the maternal exposure, for mothers, for lead, we got detailed value. And in these two studies, the cadmium levels are much smaller, but the cadmium level is such that all the babies should be exposed by cadmium levels. We don't know the implication. There are no reference levels. These are the things we need to study. But I must say, before we study any of those things, just focus on lead, because that's everywhere. Rice, vegetables, drinking water, everywhere. So if we target on just one, and other things will come automatically down, because they appear concurrently in everything. They appear concurrently in everything. And I think I mentioned this, it's 13 is the blood level to cause neurological development in children. And for kidney disease, it's 15 micrograms per liter. And that refers to a BMCL benchmark doses of dietary exposure, which is a function of frequency and the toxic level. And if one gets exposed at the rate of 0.63 micrograms per kilogram body weight per day, that's an average, as it were, then that is a critical level for causing chronic kidney disease. And 1.5 is for blood pressure effects. And we expose people at very much higher levels than these. So we should be able to explain chronic kidney disease, for example, by cadmium and lead. And by each, we can account for about 15. Dr. Jalal, for example, and even the WHO study results. It's just that we didn't know how to interpret these things at the time. And our knowledge has to be very different now. And we got to move into a new space now and begin to address this issue. So, and cadmium and lead, they act synergistically. So, say 25% of CKDU, we can easily explain by the two heavy metals. One thing though, we don't know, when I say we, I'm a minnow in this game. The nephrologists don't know how the kidneys fail. I don't think we really need to bother too much about it anymore. Do that on the side, but focus on how to stop these diseases. Because we simply cannot go on like this. Simply cannot go on like this. And I think earlier I showed the number of, our birth rate is coming down. I'll show that again later. And within 5 years, from 2019 to 2023 and 23, in the 5 years, birth rate has dropped by 23.2%. That's a hell of a drop. And one would say, how could it be, how crazy, you know? And even I would have said that if I didn't know the background, but I did not expect that to be that high. And that is a drop of something like 4.6% per year. And I believe we are in a negative population growth now. And if we continue to do this, we are going to be in very serious trouble. Unbelievable trouble, purely because of maternal exposure of the baby. We can explain, because if it is causing kidney disease, they are not going to, they may die young, but up to the middle age or up to 2030, population might remain stagnant as it were. But the thing is, our children are falling ill with these diseases now. And this is what's happening. Maternal and family detoxification. If the mother has toxicants in the body, by Jalal and Panagasuri and Vikram Singh data, we know that. We haven't measured, by the way, in the bodies of mothers or in the milk or whatever. But when we know that there's a potential, I am prepared to say this, and I would challenge anyone to dispute. And so the mother is exposing the baby in the womb. Then once the baby is born, mother gives through milk toxicants, and then after that, when the child begins to consume family food, get exposed, and gradually, progressively, the body toxicant levels or the body burden goes up. And this is basic and one would understand fairly easily. And this one, people may dispute. This is my theory. And I say, when this mother, say a brand new mother, marrying a farmer in a colony, and the day she goes there, say she goes pregnant. So there's no issue about the baby in the womb being exposed now. But the day she goes there, she'll be exposed to the toxicant through the family diet. And at the say she has a child soon afterwards, when that child grows, comes to the marriageable age, say around 20 or so, then that person will have higher toxic level, and that will be the second generation. And that mother will give more toxicants in the womb to the fetus and through the milk. And when that child grows to be a mother one day, she'll have higher level, even higher level of toxicants. And that mother will pass on some of that high toxicants to the next mother, third generation. And those babies will be born perhaps with the birth defects. I think that's what we are seeing now. And there won't be a fourth generation. After this, these children won't survive to produce children. This is what I'm saying. Please look into this. Take it apart, my theory. Please prove me wrong. I have no issue whatsoever. Now, take an interest. That's important. Take an interest. Now we need to ask how and why we failed. We rejected the WHO study because it gave bad news. And perhaps people thought, the politicians at the time thought that, let's not upset people, let's solve it, address it quietly. Perhaps that's what happened. And they thought, give clean water, and that'll do the trick. And we know now that doesn't work. That doesn't work. From water, heavy metals are less than 10%. Rise from 50 to 70, 80%, depending on what data you look at. There are various studies, but the thing is, you get an assortment of figures. Vegetables, about 25 to 30. Unless we address the diet, we will not address it. Unless we, with some people, rice alone is enough to cause these issues. This is the tragedy. Rice alone is enough. There we are. And the other one is, everyone knew at the time that this was associated with agricultural products, fertilizer and agrochemicals. Otherwise, little kg what you see, put them together, most people might say agrochemical. No, the fertilizer people don't want to know what's happening with what's called the agrochemicals, that is weedicides and pesticides. They want to be separated. So we got to be a little careful what we say, not that upsetting those people, but how the subject is understood. So we got data for the heavy metals. Then, those who want to hide these, the facts, there are very many of those. Within Sri Lanka, suppliers of fertilizer, etc., And manufacturers, importers, distributors, users, no one wants to admit to this issue. They think that they can get away with, they have been getting away with, because there are no laws against pollution. There are no laws against that. In fact, government has sanctioned pollution to a very good extent. Around 2016-17, I was at a meeting when the plantation sector, when I say plantation, tea plantation, other people are not represented in these matters, like the farmers, rice oil farmers, or the farmers in the hill country who are also polluting, but at a much lesser extent than the tea plantations. And also there are publications to show that half the fertilizer applied ends up in the river. That's why we got such a large amount of toxicants in the reservoirs and in our lives. So if anyone is polluting, it is the tea plantation sector, because they pollute, and also they have money to replace the fertilizer to account for the loss in the washable. Because they go by the yield and they apply whatever necessary to get the yield. Okay, so when the tea industry blames the poor farmer, saying that they are polluters, and some politicians do that too, unfortunately, because they are a soft touch. They have no voice. And in Sri Lanka, now the reason for failure is lack of academic freedom, because Sri Lankan academics don't have the freedom to say these are the things that's causing the disease. Say, for example, heavy metal. They are unable to say that. So they skirt around the issue. They skirt around the issue. They are looking at how the kidneys are failing. As I said, that's not the issue anymore. We need to begin to prevent this happening. So we need academic freedom in Sri Lanka. And other one is internal and external interference. I think I mentioned that plantation sector and the people associated with fertilizer, etc. And now in this background, we have, I don't know whether I got the right slide there, perhaps not. I'll come back to this. Okay, perhaps not the one, it doesn't matter. Let's look at the thalassemia history in Sri Lanka and the kidney disease history in Sri Lanka. Perhaps some of you might know who worked in Sri Lanka before leaving the country, and some of you are, some Sri Lankans are already on the joining the Zoom, they might know. Kidney disease was first identified in larger scale in Kurunegala. And thalassemia too was identified in Kurunegala. Why? Because before the irrigation scheme started, they started with Ulugula Tunnel in 1976. About 11, 12 years later, 1992, about 15 years later, we got first CKDU was identified in Anuradhapur area. Thalassemia or kidney disease was first identified in Kurunegala, little before that. I haven't been able to get the find data. I have asked some people to supply me that. And anyway, it was before CKD was identified in Anuradhapur. And thalassemia also was first identified in Kurunegala. The reason is, as I say, they got hill country water, rice cultivation through Madhuroya, Ramukmanaya, etc. before they were developed, the natural waterways at the time. And as we see from the diagram here, we see that thalassemia is highest. These are from the hospital studies published in 2019. Thalassemia, some 700 odd thalassemia patients in Kurunegala. And Ragam, for example, there would be patients from various places. And by the way, from Ragam came the thalassemia study report. And in other places, smaller numbers. What's going to happen one day, wherever we have kidney disease, there will be a thalassemia there, just like the kidney disease, just like the any other map, if you were to develop these maps. That we need to do, and these maps are developed by different people using different graphic models. We need to unify these things and have a uniform system, and also to increase the granularity or the resolution, one might say, so that we exclude places such as towns. If the diseases are there, these do include, but otherwise we need to keep them out. By doing this, we show that, well, everyone has this problem, must be something else. I know this is the view we are taking. And so, as you see in the, this is the wet zone here. No, here's the wet zone here, no diseases. And from the earlier maps, we don't have CKD in this area. And this thalassemia could be places like Kantale on the eastern coast. There are patients associated with the sugar industry or the sugar plantations. We don't talk much about those. There are patients in the southeast. There are paddy farmers as well as people affected by the sugar plantations. They are downhill of those agricultural activities. Now, as I said, I analyzed the WHO study data. And in the WHO study data, large number of 7,500 data point, the cases in the study group, and there are people who are identified as healthy, no CKBU, and no issue at all as. And I analyzed that data. And I'm only presenting the female data because we got more numbers for female data than male data, but the patterns are the same. Urine creatinine is pretty low in some, these healthy people. Urine creatinine is pretty low in some. And serum creatinine is pretty low too in some. And the serum creatinine is more reliable index than the urine creatinine. The thing is, serum creatinine is showing that they are in hyperfiltration. These patients, not patients, these healthy people are in hyperfiltration. And that takes creatinine out. Normally people wouldn't say that, or wouldn't say, no, that's steady. No, takes creatinine out as such, it brings the urine creatinine level down. Well, if it's taking out, it should be high. Why is it down? Because they are in diuresis or polyuria. I'll come to it in a little bit. And so there are two issues. It is taking more of it out. Well, when you look at the serum creatinine, we can say, all right, because that creatinine is being taken out. But yet, in the urine of healthy creatinine level in the urine of healthy people, it is down. That is because of dilution. We need to account for that. In the WHO study, we did not account for this. And this is, well, it's easy for me to say it now. This is where the issue is. When we compare to standardized to creatinine, heavy metals, then that may give a relatively good correct answer. But the thing is, each individual element, let me go to the next slide. Now, okay, here it is. I have looked at urine creatinine versus arsenic, cadmium, and lead individually. By the way, these are in patients. I have taken the minimum level patient as such, lowest cadmium levels, etc. And these are without diabetes, as we know. These patients are without diabetes. And why is urine creatinine is low? We could say because of the patients. Okay, right. But previously we know that healthy people are passing excess urine, excess creatinine, and yet their renal urine creatinine levels are low. And I believe some of these things are because of dilution. And these high levels, few in numbers, and maybe because they are even in kidney failure, some are still passing high levels of creatinine in urine, and perhaps some of these people are still indicating until the last minute that they have got a good renal function. If I go to the next slide, and this is the relationship between the weed-side pesticides. There seems to be some indication that some correlation, not with all, some, indicating they are a contributor. And in fact, I did multiple I forget the word now, multiple regression analysis, for example, and I find that there is an association to heavy metals and to weed-side and pesticides. They are contributors to hyperfiltration. Then, when hyperfiltration happens, we have urine, calcium, copper, selenium I'm looking at. There are other things too. There are other things too, like sodium, potassium. They have also changed. The thing is, we have very high urine creatinine and very low too. And point is, there seems to be a relationship between urine micronutrients and urine creatinine. What I believe is, what's happening is that people are micronutrient deficient because micronutrients are being taken out with the urine because they are in hyperfiltration, let's put it that way. And that's why stunting and wasting, anemia in children, such indicators haven't changed till 2007, despite the nutritious programs. So that's why we need to understand this issue from the fundamental. We need to accept the WHO study and go back to basics and look at these things. If someone can reject these things, that's fine. I have no issue at all. But unless we do that, in my view, we will not solve this issue. And then this is sorry, this is a standard diabetic kidney failure model by someone else, I should say. But in that, you see that hyperfiltration and renal function going into renal function reserve, and then begin to come down. And I believe, because this is happening in normal diabetes and kidney failure, our specialists are well aware of these things, and they know what it is when this happens, when kidney failure happens or before kidney failure happens with diabetic patients or high blood pressure, hypertensive patients. But what's happening in the CKDU2, this is my model, at the normal level in healthy patients, when you are exposed to toxicant, you go into hyperfiltration and this serum creatinine, and that goes down. And when the kidneys begin to fail, in the ascending phase, SCR begins to recover, meaning comes normal and goes into failure stages. I think this was observed in CKD patients before now they have been followed up, and people also know if they get a pain or tiredness or whatever, they will go to the hospital. And also there's some screening going on. So doctors know what they are doing now from management point of view, different management, not avoiding the cause of it. So this doesn't happen anymore, I hope. But the thing is, in the WHO study, they said, or following that, everyone said, CKD happened, they develop kidney failure suddenly. I think that is because of this. You go to the doctor and they do a serum creatinine and work out the EGF and say, your kidneys are working fine. Or perhaps they didn't do it until you come to that point. Your kidney, one would say your kidneys are working fine and you feel healthy. And this seems to be happening in Colombo. And in Colombo, there are reports, or people have told me personally, people working in hospital, IPUs, for example, there is AKI. And that, I believe, is happening because of toxicant exposure. And they will not be caught until last minute because of this hyperfiltration. And that's that. And we have failed because of bogus science and fraudulent academics. I'm very sorry to say that is a fact. We have falsified the data and facts to deny the cause of agricultural toxins or the role of agricultural toxicants in rice and farmers and general public health, and to underestimate the disease burden. That's been done by the National Cancer Control Program. That is in a publication, I believe, and the World Bank funded agricultural policy. I will justify myself now. These are from the website of the NCCP, National Cancer Control Program of the MOH. These maps appear on the website as they are. And for the adults, there are Excel tables, not for the children. Perhaps you might notice that nearly all the cancers, nearly all I should say, change at the same time. Say, for example, here, nearly all have gone, and all have come down, all have gone down. And 2016, nearly all have come down. It is male and female, similar setup. This is not cancer. This is okay for, I refer to them as alabatala in Sri Lanka. It's okay for carrots and beetroot and leeks and whatever. Climate, depending on the climate, on the region. All the crops may do well or poorly. Cancers can't do that. And cancers don't begin to go down suddenly. Also, they don't begin to go up suddenly either. They are gradual process. Why? Why? And in 2060, all the cancers will go down. Okay? And all the pediatric cancers. It's not possible. I'm not a cancer specialist. I just look at figures. Let me put it that way. And it is bizarre to me. And my understanding is pediatric cancers up to 19 are caused by the mother exposing the baby in the womb, not because of lifestyle. Adult cancers are lifestyle. It is the mother exposing the baby, and it is not a genetic condition. It cannot be passed. The good example I can give is, those in England would know this well, those who are senior, I might say. And in 50s, late 50s, early 60s, we had thalidomide babies, where thalidomide was used for morning sickness. And those who took it ended up producing severely handicapped children, various birth defects. And the worst visual might be without hands or feet or partial. But the thing is, those children got married in the adult. Sometimes too, another victim, thalidomide victim. But their children were not, they didn't have birth defects. I think in Sri Lanka, that type of thing is happening. We can prove it by controlling the toxic exposure of the baby born by the mother. Do that. We need to protect the mothers, not at the time they are pregnant, long before that. For the reasons I mentioned earlier, there seems to be a generational effect. So, say, children who are going to fall ill in another 30, 40 years, as they are already conceived, or they'll be conceived now. So we need to control these things now, thinking ahead. If we don't do that, we are going to get into a huge muddle. I don't know the real pediatric cases, but everyone knows that they are going on. They are going on. But the National Cancer Control Program shows that they are going down, or they are not rising as fast as they ought to. And since 2016, they are going down. And it's difficult to comprehend looking at the graph. But the moment I saw it, I saw this is funny. Then I digged into it. And I did a simple analysis. I looked at the rate of change from year to year. This is for the adults. And this is what happens. Around 2007, here it went up. It's okay going up. And the percentage might be high because the numbers are small. But the thing to be concerned is, why did all go up? And why did they all come down a little later? And why did they all go up again? And why did they all change together in a similar manner? And why that happened with the females too? And strangely, it is happening at the same time. Need I say anymore? They filled the data. Whenever it went up, they pulled it down. And went up again, they pulled it down. Well, this is how we manage cancer. This is how we manage everything. We need to get over this. There has to be a major political decision to say there's a problem and this is what the problem is. And somehow I get the impression that this government too may fail to address this issue because they haven't said much. But I must say, I think it was the President Sanayaka, or just before that, he mentioned in the rise of the issue that the issue is so big and it brings everyone down, the whole family. And now some people commit suicide. The man of the house commits suicide because they are going to be destroyed. Whole family is going to be destroyed because the expenses and the drain of the family. And also, he said another time that the death certificates are falsified. I'm not going to dispute it. I had my own views, I had heard of. Let's say he's good. And that's how we manage affairs. And most unfortunately, now, recently, someone sent me a link. The US cancer specialist seems to be advising on agriculture. I couldn't see the logic, but I can now. I think what they are trying to say is we can control these diseases by other means. The other means are gene modification. Let me say why I say that. These bogus science, I think, need I say that, I think you got the message, how and why we fail. Mysterious vaccinations. They have been in the media and TV newspapers that I'm aware of few. In Meentale, 7 children who had a vaccination had to be transferred to Anuradhapura Hospital. They were all under 9. I just can't see why 7 children wanted the same vaccination in a base hospital at the same time. Probably they were brought in for a vaccination or they were day patients. And something went wrong and 7 had to be transferred. Similarly, in the rural area, the diabetic or something like that, 5 out of 25 had to be sent to hospital. After receiving vaccination, Kanishta Vidyalaya, I think that's a junior school, maybe up to 12 or whatever, that type of age, not the senior school. Seniors would be 15, 16, 17. And we need to, someone has explained this. And a strange thing happened during the election time. 3 election officers in the polling stations died. 3 different places. To me, it's a very strange. It's not a coincidence. Cannot be a coincidence. I just wonder whether some volunteers were treated, government servants or agencies were treated with a vaccination before that or something else, testing vaccines. And also last April, I was in Sri Lanka before I came to live in Sri Lanka. And senior politicians, for example, say, Merla Vatanama, people are falling dead. No explanation. Now I think I know why. They probably were testing drugs at the time. And these children are being tested upon, not treated, they are tested upon. I present that challenge and I want them to say, no, it's not that, or the health department to prove otherwise. And this is in a background. Sachit Nityananda, I think, is a professor from Calvin University, part of the thalassemia study group, and he's proposing in a review article in 2021, suggesting that we did gene modification. They are very good things. They must be done, no doubt. But have we got the wherewithal to do that? When we can't get a saline, vial of saline, to chlorhexidine, wash your mouth, what? Anything. But is this the solution? Is this the answer to toxicant exposure? Do they think that they can do it? I shouldn't be, well, this is not a scientific arena, so to say, it's semi. They are living in Mondakokule. That's my name. And this is in the background again. Oops. I don't know whether you can say the background is this. And we know that the former health minister, one of them, Gammampila, got into hot water, and he was on remand, and he has cases against him. On this issue, I believe still, for someone sent into the health department saline vials instead of immunoglobulin. Wow. But I don't think that was a mistake. I think that was a correct order, fulfillment of a correct order. Saline was a placebo. That's my interpretation. And I say that. Meaning in a legal point of view, I say that. I think they've been doing this study with other school children, etc. As other people do. The government has to complain on this issue, but not this government. The blame does not lie with this government. So it should be easier to do it. But this is happening. And we had a case of 10,000 children being treated for measles. There may have been a measles breakout, but it is also quite possible for a cynic like me to think that it's very easy to give a placebo instead of a vaccination for measles, because you give them both to an arm. Anyway, so these are real serious issues we need to address. I think I said quite a bit, and I'm sure you got, well, the thing is, now, one other thing. Now, this is Nadavacha district in 2016. This is from the MOH. And I think 27% of Brahmin divisions, majority were CKDU. In some places, it goes as high as that one, say about 70%. And I would say there are cancer patients, thalassemia patients, so-called thalassemia patients in the same community. And these communities are not going to rise again. And this is spreading pretty fast. This is spreading pretty fast. And we don't talk about it. We are in a, I don't know what we are in. Anyway, I better stop there. There we are. Right.
Right. Thank you very much, Kamal, for that lovely talk. So let me get my head around what you're proposing. So give me your thoughts at the moment. What's the cause for CKD from the start to the end? So you think cadmium is the main cause, or are there heavy metals?
Yeah, heavy metals too. One thing, well, the reason is this.
Right.
There's sufficient cadmium to account for about 15% on its own. Okay, cadmium. Cadmium is a well-established agent for chronic kidney disease, and it was identified in isolation in Japan around 60 years ago, 1960s, where they had an industrial accident regarding gold mining. Uphill of a river, they were gold mining using cadmium salts to separate the gold. And the people down below, downriver, developed kidney disease. And so that's a clear-cut case that cadmium is an agent for chronic kidney disease. And that's been identified by the WHO for a very long time too. And the lead also is a chronic kidney disease, and that was identified around 2009 or so. And I think it was in the US. I forget her name now. Anyway, in the US, and that is identified as a kidney disease causing agent by the European Union. I haven't seen the figures or in writing from the WHO. WHO seems to be a little slow on this because the NSF, the European Union, they had it on their website for 15 years now. Yeah. And so I would say the heavy metal. There may be other things, such as weed sites and pesticides. We don't know. But at least we need to begin to address what the known ones. There are so many unknown ones. People claim various things. They are correct. But let's
so let's take your point that okay, so what you're proposing is that CKD is caused by these heavy metals, and the heavy metals are in the hill country water, which comes down, and people use it for paddy cultivation. Is that what you're proposing?
absolutely.
Okay, and how does the hill country water get that heavy metals?
From fertilizer, mainly from fertilizer. Even things such as glyphosate, or glyphosate is one of the ingredients in a mixture of called Roundup, for example.
Okay.
And you get heavy metals in much smaller quantities than in fertilizer.
And then why do you think that areas using say like Samudra does not get the same problem? Are they not using the same fertilizer?
They do. But the thing is, small quantity of toxicants in the hill country water gets what's called biomagnified in the areas where they use that water for rice cultivation. In Serenaka Samudra water, just like in my hometown, Ahangame waters, there are toxicants. But we know by also from scientific documentation now, we don't have CKD or kidney disease or any other disease. So it seems that they are exposed at a much lower level. But the people who rise, for example, in Rajarata, are getting higher dose, and we got the heavy metal levels for the two waters, so to say, hill country water and rainwater. Rainwater toxic level is much less. These heavy metals are there, but they are not enough to give a critical dose.
Okay, so now I'm getting the thread, the sequence of events. So the farmers in the highlands, they're using the fertilizer with heavy metals, and that will be washed down to with the rains and the Mahavali River, etc. And that is used by the paddy farmers in certain areas, and that get into a food chain, which causes CKD. Is that your proposal?
Yes, indeed, and I must add, the tea plantations too in hill country. Hill country vegetable farmers, they use all these things, and they also pollute. But they are not trying to cover up. They haven't got the means to do that. And the tea planters or plantations, they are the bigger polluter, and they have a voice, and they are covering up. So they are both not equally guilty at different levels. I'm not pointing fingers when I say guilty, I'm not accusing them. Let me say they did not know. But that doesn't mean that when we know that there's an issue, try to
Okay,
cover it.
let's leave that point for a minute.
Yeah.
So the next question, logical question is, we import these fertilizers into this country, right?
Yeah.
So there are other countries which are using exactly the same fertilizer. Now, have the other countries seen exactly the same CKD increase?
Yes, indeed. We got large number of CKDU or kidney disease with unknown reason in South America, Mesoamerica, places like Nicaragua. I believe the numbers are much larger. And I don't know why. I haven't studied that. But they are there. But there are do-gooders from America, for example. US Health is involved there, and they are trying to address it, saying that this is climate change and working in the hot sun. Leave that aside. Let me come to our part of the world. In Cairo, in the suburbs, we got this issue. They use Nile waters for paddy cultivation in the suburbs of Cairo. I haven't got the details measurement. And similarly, in eastern India, there is CKDU, and I haven't got the details of price toxicity, etc. But Indian government or Indian scientists have identified CKDU in this area. And I have looked at the map. Everywhere there's CKDU, there's a river. And so I say it is a toxicant coming down the river. In China, we got this problem. In Thailand, we got this problem. And almost everywhere, when I say almost, because some places I don't know, there is a river association. But in Sri Lanka, this problem is so huge because we, for our staple, the rice, or well, up to 65% of our rice comes from that area. And so such a vast proportion of the population is affected by these toxicants in that rice. And whereas in India, they eat various other things too. And I don't know what they eat in Cairo, for example. Probably they do other things, but of course they have kidney disease, what's called CKDU. So it depends on the country's diet. For example, in Sri Lanka, within Sri Lanka itself. Now, recently, there was a publication. I am not pleased with that publication at all, because someone known to me was associated with that. A Chinese group, in the main, they were looking at Sri Lankan rice. They were looking only at supermarket rice and or what's called the marketplace rice and different areas, and said there's no issue. But the thing is, health issues are not with the people who eat the supermarket rice. It is with the people who eat what they grow. They didn't, so that someone overseas, for example, who doesn't know anything about Sri Lanka, they might think, well, what's the issue? Their rice is okay. They don't know that the farmer doesn't buy his rice. So these are bad publications. There are so many like that. So anyway, I answered the question, what is causing what and why the problem is so big in Sri Lanka. Problem is so big in Sri Lanka because we depend on, for rice cultivation, such a large amount of the proportion of rice output yield from toxic water. Whereas other places, that is not the case. I can't say too much about other countries. I don't know much, but there seems to be always a river associated with cultivation.
Hi, Doctor.
Yes,
Hi.
David, go on, David.
Hi, Doctor. I just wanted to know your opinion. Do you think the medical fraternity making enough recommendations or shouting from the rooftops to highlight the crisis we are in? And are they working with the government and the authorities to mitigate some of the really high-risk points you've raised?
Right. The answer is no. The answer is no. And those who are, they have given in. And those who are working with the international community, fortunately, I don't remember their names. Otherwise, I would mention them. We are being led by people who work in Nicaragua, etc. who are trying to say that this is because of climate change and working in the sun. And they are from England. They were earlier from Royal Free and New Zealand, and they have shifted to Hammersmith campus at Imperial. And medical specialists I know tried to introduce me to them, and they didn't want to know. That was some time ago. And they are suggesting that we don't have a good urinary biomarker to find out kidney failure. In fact, that is true. And that is true for the reason I mentioned earlier, because of dilution. And also, well, I'm digressing a bit, also, each individual metal contributes to the creatinine output. So we just can't take the blanket creatinine value and divide the heavy metal by that and say, oh, it's very low. No, we need to develop new techniques, new methods. So leaving that aside, coming back to the Sri Lankan scenario, no, we are not doing that. And the thing is, now I said I haven't made publications on this. We had that difficulty. I worked with Sarah Jasinger. Long time ago, we tried to make a publication using the data in the WHO study website, meaning BMC nephrology. In that, they gave in table form the toxicants in the diet, in the rice, yams, etc., and pulses. But in the publication, the hard copy or the web final publication, they were given it graphical form. And in that, they put rice and pulses together. Rice was higher, pulses lower, and rice we consume about 80% to pulses 20%. So fiddle that figure. So I got the correct figure, the original submission figures from the website. And one of the referees took it up with the BMC nephrology, and they prevented us using the data. And after that, I haven't bothered at all attempted to publish anything. But I analyzed and I passed on to the what's called the CKDU committee and the academy. Let me say something about the publication. Rajita Diploma Kamini Vanakasuri, and Jala's results. They are published. They are peer reviewed. They are gathering dust. No one is doing anything. I'm trying to suggest to people like Saroj, Jasinger, to read. I know those people. They should regroup and begin to readdress this. And they must be given almost executive power by the president. And we must make the bogus publications and criminal offense, because they are killing people. They are killing people. We got to clean up the whole thing, not only our bodies of people affected, not only the environment, the academia too. And I also must say, when it comes to academic work on this issue, we are on our, sooner we realize that and act likewise, the better. If we try to latch on to international bodies too much, unless we can say these are genuine people or whatever, you've got to be very careful. Some of the studies we are doing, our scientists are doing, we are not going to get anywhere. So the international groups are suggesting now to take biopsies of kidneys. Is that going to happen? Are you going to screen by taking biopsies, skin biopsies? Crazy. Perhaps we should do the blood test, easier test, and develop something on the blood levels. That is the most stable indicated. And there we are. But we need to regroup. We are not addressing any of these things. And thalassemia, I challenge them. If necessary, legally. I will do that.
Okay, we got a couple more questions. I think the first one is coming from Devinder, right?
Sorry, I can't hear you properly.
One, I did ask my question, but I have a follow-up question.
Go
Doctor,
ahead.
so would you say the medical fraternity is part of the problem?
Yes. If someone were to say CKD is a genetic disease, those who say things like that, yes. And thalassemia to say that heavy metals, etc., have no bearing on the thalassemia or hemoglobinopathies. That's what they have indicated. They ignored that. They are a problem. They are from the medical fraternity. Absolutely. And by the way, these diseases are in the families. We were earlier looking at CKDU. They found that these diseases in the families. That is because they eat the same toxicants. Mother, father, brother, daughter, everyone. And in the village, relations, everyone. Same peripheral, same set of peripheral. So that they almost conveniently converted that to genetic diseases because it's in the family for a different reason. Thalassemia or hemoglobinopathies are in the family for a different reason. And well, they are a problem. They are a problem. And some people are placed in very high positions internationally.
There's another question by Kavan. Dr. Kavan Ratnatunga. Kavan, you want to speak out and ask your question directly?
I am asking, you mentioned arsenic, which became very controversial issue in Lanka. Is it a contributor to CKD like cadmium that you mentioned? You spoke more about cadmium than arsenic. What is it relatively? Is it an important issue?
Absolutely. I think no one seems to know exactly how the kidneys are failing. Okay. But the thing is, one thing we know is heavy metals can cause proteinuria because proteins are, I don't have to tell the medics, they're negatively charged, and these heavy metals are positively charged. They tend to lower the charge on the protein molecule and hence overcome the charge barrier in the kidney. And so what I would say is arsenic would contribute to, or it does seem to, from my analysis, contributes to hyperfiltration. So it would be a precise mechanism by which it works. I could not tell you. No one seems to know those things. But it certainly is a contributor, I would say that. And we should not, as I say, attempt to find out how exactly kidneys are failing now, because we'll get bogged down there and we'll be stuck there forever. Now we should attempt to reduce the exposure, look at the different indicators. Look at blood. And if these things are high in blood, reduce that. And then look at what's happening in the urine and kidney disease too, and all the other diseases. And also in infertility, for example, heavy metals are known to cause infertility through various foods. So we need to look at those things too. And my point is, agricultural chemicals, fertilizer, not the goodies in the fertilizer, but the heavy metals and the weedicides and pesticides. The glyphosate, for example, no one knows what the mechanism is, but it is associated with kidney disease. Perhaps plays a role. But we need to at least reduce the heavy metals. If we try to do that, perhaps at the same time we may accidentally reduce the weed-side pesticide exposure too. And in solving this, unless we clear up hill country, we got to let the things get washed away. It might take 5, 6, 10 years. Then clean up the hydro reservoirs, then clean the river up. And that may take 10, 15, 20 years. And in Japan, when they had the issue, they covered the topsoil of paddy fields with fresh soil. It took them 30 years. And I say that the Rajarata or the dry spot paddy fields are not suitable for paddy cultivation. I say that because the amount of cadmium, arsenic, and lead in the soil that takes to yield a kilogram of rice is such that it is 10,000 to 100,000 times at least more than the amount that comes in the rice grain. When I say the volume, that is about 2.5 square yards, and I took 14 inches depth in that volume. Divided by 2, divided by 10. Even still, those numbers are very high. And I would say this soil is an issue. But we have agriculturalists who seem to say, no, it doesn't matter. Prove it. Because those who say, no, it doesn't matter, that's the day today.
So, Devinda, is that a new question or a legacy?
Yeah, I do have, yes.
Okay.
Dr. Gammampila, just wanted to know what have you or what can you do to almost whistleblow or highlight these crucial risk factors into the authorities? What can you do? And is there a way that you could approach the media or the health services or the public health services?
Right. Media, when people did not know what was going on, that's about 6, 7 years ago now, people like Farah Shakutali interviewed. And Jeevite Idak, other than interview. They gave me time to, whatever I said, I had to say. I had about maybe 7 to 8 newspaper articles, interviews, and my own writing. But that doesn't happen anymore. Now they know. And they are all, I would say, one has to look at the politics and interconnections with these things. They all got connections too. Look after their self-interest, let me put it that way. They are employers or they have direct connections. Now, after a long time, I had a newspaper article, 2 articles, about a month ago in Ceylon today. I'll send you those links. If you go to my Facebook page, you might find them there. And that is a break I had. And I also was interviewed by these people who interview people, not the mainstream people, others, like Sepal Amarasinghe did, and Satyajit Fernando did, and recently, and also from the organic Lanka organic movement, and they have given me a lot of airtime. And at least they have realized what is happening there on the ground on this issue. They have realized that. And when it comes to political influence, I wrote to the president, current president, the prime minister and the health minister, and I sent a 150-page document, not electronically, hardbound copies I delivered to their officers. And I had acknowledgement from the secretary to the president, or secretary to the president, and a copy letter to the health minister suggesting that president, I believe, thought that there's some sense in what I was saying and look into it. No one has contacted me, but I think a few days ago too, the president said he would make the diet safe. I don't know what that means, I don't know what that means. When you don't have food, making diet safe seems to be make the food available. But if they make the food available, with these toxic levels, they are not doing anyone any favors. If only we tell the UN, I have spoken to the UN, I am unable to repeat what their thoughts might be, and several times they know what's going on. They are waiting for us to tell them until they can't do anything. When children are affected, when the potential mothers are affected, we are supposed to tell them. It doesn't matter what cause. We know that, say, so many thalassemia patients, for example, tell the union, ask them how they could help, tell the UNICEF. But use Rajesh Vikram Singh and Kamini Mandagas Suryas and Anand Jalas did it up. Government should be able to, must have some respect for those people. Anand Jalas is a government servant. He's from the health ministry. But he can't say what he wants to say. I know that. I know what he knows, and I know his limitations. I do believe it. But we need to communicate with the president. If we want to save Sri Lanka, here's a chance. We'll get over the economic problem, these things will happen. We'll get over them. But this, we will not get over. We will not get over. I'm pretty certain. And one thing I did not mention, now the Colombo recent, within the last month, in January, I think, it was in the newspaper, birth rate has dropped from something like 350 to 255, something like 100,000. 24.1% or something like that. Annual rate is something like 4.6. I think I mentioned this. If that happens, does it not, shouldn't the medics be panicking now, saying what's going to happen to us? And these numbers will multiply, not simple multiplication, I think they will multiply exponentially within a very short time purely because of the mothers exposing the babies in the womb. And please lobby the government and tell them, and please, those who are overseas, say that please try to get help. I know we'll be able to get help from UK, providing the Sri Lankan government says we have a problem. I'm working on it. But I want the government to say we have a problem. We are not saying that. So please get the government to say that there's a problem. If someone, well, I think we should talk to Trump maybe now, because change of government. Until up to now,
Thank you, Doctor.
they haven't been helpful.
Thank you, Dr. Kamal.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, we got another question from Professor Mahesh Nirmalan.
Hi.
Hi, Dr. Gammampila. Thank you very much.
Hi.
I think we met once before in London, and I'm
I think
very grateful or very appreciative of your perseverance and your passion in the field. But I just want to make two observations.
Yeah.
One is, I mean, you make observations and suggestions which are not backed by data. I'll give you one example. You just said that the northern and eastern provinces do not have CKD, which is clearly false, because I know the reason why you say that is that those studies have not been done because nobody has been there. I know that the village of Karinagar is half empty because because of the sheer massive increase in CKD. Same in Jaffna. So that's point number one. Point number two is the whole reason why we are where we are in relation to CKD is because of some of the groups that were involved in the early studies of CKD invoking divinity and how the hypothesis was generated in somebody's dreams, and then the same group going on to taking on very extreme nationalistic positions against individual ethnic groups. So the whole CKD research except I respect some of the groups who have done a lot of work in Peradeniya, in Kalaniya. Rajita is a close friend of mine. But on the whole CKD research platform in Sri Lanka is based on this Battahira Kumantranaya and all that business which people like Channa Jayasamana peddle. That is why we are where we are. So I think so we have to be a bit more circumspect in what we, for example, those epidemiological figures that he showed is what it is because people have not looked at the whole of Sri Lanka. I am sure if a robust prevalence study is done, the whole of the dry zone will have a very high incidence of CKD. So heavy metals must be a contributor.
Can I interrupt you there?
Yes, go on.
No. I don't know whether I can, let me, right, okay, I can get the maps. Right. Tell me, whether I have covered Jaffna, well, not Jaffna, the northern province. Have I not covered? Have I not covered?
Hold on. The prevalence of CKD in the northern province is high. That's the point I'm trying to make. The reason why it's not showing up in your map is that because nobody has done those studies.
Yeah, haven't they done in Kilinochchi?
The point I'm trying to make is that those islands just north of are full of CKD. Jaffna Hospital is full of CKD. So the reason why they're not showing up in those maps is that robust prevalence studies, people who should have done it, i.e. the Jaffna University, has not actually done it. So based on this kind of prevalence data, it's almost impossible in my view because the data is incomplete.
Right, okay. But I might say point granted if you say that some people selectively haven't done it. Fair enough. The thing is, from the way I see it, it is only in places where we use hill country water paddy cultivation. I'll tell you, give the example. If you go down Minipa Canal was opened in 1987. CKD or CKDU, but advanced stages was discovered in 2002. It takes about 15, 16 years. Okay? In the first village, when you go down Minipa Canal, going north, a place called Kolonaya, where I've been about 3 times. In one village, there were 4 people receiving aid or the social benefits. In the next village, there were 46. What is the difference? What do you think is the difference?
No, I'm not denying the fact that
what I'm trying to say is, northern province must be investigated more properly, but Jaffna Peninsula does not get hill country water. Okay, and the difference here in Kolonaya is, first village, Kolonaya, gets the water from the local reservoir on the local hills. And the other one gets Minipa Canal. The reason is Minipa Canal runs across the hilly terrain sideways. So on the one side of the canal, they don't have access to the water. So hence they are safe. And out of these 4 people, one person had a paddy field or had his paddy field on the lower side of the canal. And he was a kidney patient. And his children are kidney patients today. I went there about 3 months ago. And he has died now. Okay. And so similarly, in Hinganga, that is near Hedipol, those who use Hinganga waters, which starts in Knuckles area, I traveled down the river all the way to Hedipol, where I processed the Minipa Canal. Ganga goes under the canal, and some paddy fields are fed there with that water. But those who take the water from Hingaga are not, they don't have disease. And those who get from the water from the Winnipeg Canal medical cultivation are patients. And I met two brothers. One is a patient, other wasn't. Senior one was in think of health, I would say. And he used Hingaga. The brother in the same village used, he had his paddy field fed by the Winnipeg Canal, and he was a patient. But the thing is, to identify whether hill country water has a role in connectivity, most certainly yes. Most certainly yes. But in northern areas, not everyone gets hill country water directly. Places like Illinois, for example. And there what's happening, or Malawi has a very large number of kidney patients for a long time. Of course, it's not in the map. I think Malawi is a little higher than it's in the green zone. And there what's happening is toxicant waters from other areas ends up there, goes to the lowest place. That's what's happening. That's why we got epicenters where the reservoirs are. Away from the reservoir, not everyone gets the same amount of water. So
the hypothesis that you are submitting is very, very plausible, that heavy metals used elsewhere is being transmitted by potential nephrotoxins are being transmitted by water and affecting people in the low-lying areas. That's a very, very plausible explanation. There might be factors which are exacerbating it. That's a different question. The point I'm trying to make is that that story is a fairly straightforward epidemiological question to answer. The fact that it has not been done in a country like Sri Lanka, full of very educated people, is because this whole business got messed up in the nationalistic political scene of the country. Otherwise, your hypothesis is a very, very respectable hypothesis. And when I first met you, I was very convinced that what you're saying is true. But the answer to that is a very simple prevalence study, randomizing the whole country. But the reason why it has not been done, or it has not been able to, nobody has been able to do it, is because this whole question got embedded within this Channa Jayasumana, Nalinda Silva, that group.
I fully agree. This is politicized. Even foreign people, those who love Sri Lanka, got links to Sri Lanka on this issue. One individual, academic, told me, this is politicized. And it's only a Sri Lankan who could solve this kind of thing. And who has a tough neck, I don't have a tough neck, but little toughness I have, or little neck I have, I'm prepared to stick it out. Simple as that. And there we are. And I fully agree. It is politicized. It has to change. It has to change. And I demand that academics are given freedom to do research work. And people from Kandy, who originally found this out, and they are being pushed into a corner. People like Tilak Abeseka, very sincere, very good people who found this out in the beginning. They are being pushed into a corner by politicians. And to a good extent, people are being ordered, scientists are being ordered to deliver, like in Eastern Bloc countries, long years ago. And that has to change.
Right. So let's see whether there are any other questions. I can't see any hands raised. Are there any other questions? We've now gone past the 2-hour time. If not, this is the time when the remaining few can open up their videos and let's show our appreciation in the usual fashion to Dr. Gammampila. Thank you very much for your talk. Very interesting it was. And we shall see how to proceed on this. Thank you.
Thanks, Ron, for giving me the chance. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Have a good evening, all of you.